welcome to the City Girls Pod, and this is the show where we're breaking down past episodes of Sex and the City. So much fun. We did it just like that. Now we're doing Sex and the City, and we are talking this week about Sex and the City Season 1, episodes 9 and 10, and it's going to be so much fun. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Jax is here.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good. This was a little less spicy than last week, but there was some nudity. So definitely.
Yeah, we give our disclaimer that this is a mature show and this is a mature podcast. So if that's not your jam, we got tons of other content that you can enjoy. This is not as not safe for work as last week. At least it was a little bit of a breather, which was nice.
Yeah, baby showers, those are safe for work, you know.
Yeah, and we decided to only do 2 episodes this week because we would end up with only 1 episode of season 1. So we'll do 2 episodes this week and we'll do 2 episodes next week. So it'll be a lot of fun. And the first episode is called The Turtle and the Hare. And this is after Samantha is dumped, she tries to turn the turtle into a catch. Is one of the plot lines going on here. But what did you think overall of this episode?
So I thought it was really interesting, this whole dynamic of should we settle? What is it like to settle? Is being married worth it? That kind of thing. I also realized in this episode, because you and I have been talking a lot about Big and his relationship with Carrie, and there are just so many things you forget from past seasons. I forgot that he had said near the beginning of their relationship that he never wanted to get married again, which is kind of a red flag for Carrie.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that too. And it's tough because that you're trying to make a relationship work and different people are bringing their experiences into the relationship. And I think that it's tough when you have those different kind of expectations of like, or even if it's just, I want things to either go faster or slower in the relationship is tough. I mean, I guess that's why they talk about, we should all listen to Charlotte when she talks about communication.
Relationship. You really should.
She says relationships need to be based on honesty and communication. And then that's when Samantha says, if you're 25, that would be adorable. At 32, it's stupid. but yeah, we learn here again that of course that Charlotte is the best.
She really is, and she's got a really stable relationship in
this episode,
and more power to her. Good for Charlotte. Yeah. She doesn't want to leave the house because of her rabbit, but she's definitely living her best life.
Yeah, I mean, I love when they have the rabbit intervention. That was hilarious.
Oh, I love that too. And when Carrie said the line about you were hiding your rabbit behind a stuffed rabbit, and it's so Charlotte. What could be more on brand than that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can understand where she's coming from because like putting yourself out there is so hard. And I mean, especially in New York City where you have all the New York City in this show, at least, you know, that there's so much competition for all the guys and just want to just stay home and not deal with it. I could completely understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, especially when she's getting a lot of her needs met. Like she's got all the friendship and love and connection from her besties, and then she's got all the sexual stuff from her rabbit that Miranda recommended. Of course, Miranda recommended it. That was also on brand. I liked that.
It was a fun moment to have the girls all, because I feel like Charlotte gets judged a lot by the girls. So it was kind of a fun moment for them coming in and being like, nope, we're not going to showing their love for her. It was a nice moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I love, going back and seeing the core four, like all in one bed together, like all snuggled up, like watching TV and eating snacks. You just see why this show works so well and why it's become, such an iconic mainstay of the culture. It's because they really did have this really strong friendship, these characters that they created, and four really incredible actresses.
Yeah. I mean, one interesting thing in this episode, I thought, is that when Carrie is talking to Big, she says, I do want a family, which is kind of sad in a way because she doesn't end up having one. And I hope that, I mean, obviously she's a fictional character, but I would hope that she would be happy with the way life turned out, because I've been lucky, because there's a lot of pressure in the world that I grew up in the Mormon world and the Latter-day Saint world, to have a family, to get married and have a family. It just hasn't worked out for me. I haven't met somebody that I want to have a family with. That just hasn't worked out yet. Maybe someday. I kind of doubt it, but I've been very fortunate because that's never been something that I have, like, I think I would be a cool experience if that happened, but it's never been something that I felt like was my calling.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of other women, especially in the environment where I was raised, is do feel like it's their calling. And so then when it doesn't happen, it's devastating for them. And I can think of a couple people in specific that that I won't name them, but a friend of mine that I feel like she just keeps trying to find something fulfilling. Like, she's been a interior designer, she's been a teacher, she's had like 4 different careers, and she keeps kind of trying to do something to fill that void. But in reality, what she really wanted was to be a wife and mother, which I think is so hard. I'm very blessed because I'm fine either way, I guess. Like, it would have been a cool
Yeah.
experience, and I don't have anything against it if it were to happen, but it's not something that's this what I felt like was my purpose. And I don't know that Carrie's necessarily saying that, but I think she definitely at least wants to be with somebody who would be open to it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That was another thing that I had forgotten, was that we see this in both episodes, her saying this to Big, and then in the episode about the baby shower and when she's thinking she's pregnant, and then it's almost like she's disappointed that she's not pregnant. And yeah, I was wondering, same thing as you, would Carrie be happy with the way that life turned out? But to your point about what you feel like your calling is, or that it wasn't necessarily your calling, I see that a lot in Carrie, and that her calling, it's never been like, I need to be a mom, I need to be a mom. It's just something that she doesn't want to shut the door on, which I think is interesting, because I think a lot of people feel like that. It's like, oh, you're not sure if you want it, but then if someone tells you that you can't have it, it's like in How I Met Your Mother, when Robin finds out that she can't have kids, and there's this disappointment, but also she didn't really want that. And man, it's complicated to be a woman.
Yeah.
It
Very true.
really is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and then at the end, they say the only way to true happiness is to live in the moment and not worry about the future. So there's, I think, some truth to that.
Yeah.
They talk a little bit about weddings in this. That the Brooke, this woman Brooke, they go to her wedding, and they say it was an average $100,000 wedding, and with investor bankers and the women who hate them.
I loved that. I think that's hilarious.
And I also liked when they said, "And us, we look like the witches of Eastwick."
And they totally do.
Yeah.
It's like the 4 of them just standing there at the not good singles table. So at weddings, it's interesting. I always heard about these iconic singles tables. And then every wedding I've been to, I feel like they actually split up the single people and don't really make a good singles table. What has been your experience of that?
Well, I have to admit, I don't really love going to weddings. I enjoy supporting my friends, but I mean, you end up just kind of sitting for the whole time, and it's just hard, not my favorite. But one of my friends, she for her wedding, she actually like insisted that all like playfully insisted that all of us that were single all brought a date to the wedding. And at first I thought that's kind of be awkward. Like this date doesn't know this person. It's going to be
Yeah.
weird for them to be at this wedding. But it actually ended up the date that I ended up taking ended up actually knowing her through, this was years and years ago. They had been in the same class actually together, so they knew each other a little bit, so that was ironic. But
Really? That's funny.
it was so much fun. It was way better because you actually had someone to talk to, someone to dance with, someone to like, it was great, I thought. And so I've always thought if I were to ever get married and have like a wedding reception with dancing and stuff like that, then I would do the same thing. I would encourage my single friends to bring a date because I thought that
I
was
love
really
that
fun.
because I think having a plus one is just like your buddy for the wedding. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like I know when I was single, it was always helpful to have that other single friend that I also knew was going to the wedding if it worked out like that. But then one time I had a plus one and I just brought like a female friend that I've been childhood friends with. I was like, look, I want someone to talk to. I don't really know a lot of people at this wedding. And it's great not to feel like you're sort of floating around with all these couples, which is another reason why the core four is so awesome. They're little witches coven because they all get to stick together at these weddings that they go
Yeah.
to.
Which I do also think is something that probably is more realistic in your 20s than in the 30s that they're supposed to be here, because it's just I feel like by the 30s one of these four would probably in real life would probably be married or in a relationship. That and that's something you see all over television. You have this sort of group of friends in 30s in 40s that I just don't think almost ever actually happens. That whether it's How I Met Your Mother, but at least that had one couple, married couple,
Yes.
which I appreciated. But yeah, obviously Friends, Seinfeld, sort of these that they can sometimes give this impression that like if you don't have this kind of group of friends that do everything together and are always in each other's lives, that there's something wrong. But I don't know anyone who has that. Yeah,
No.
most people have like a friend here, a friend there. I'll see, like for me, I have not counting online friendships, I have like I have a friend named Rachel who I see like once. I see her every quarter or so. It was longer during the pandemic, but she has 3 kids. It's tough to coordinate it all, but we love each other and we have a good relationship. And I feel like that's the way most kind of friendships are these days.
Yeah, I agree. I think because a lot of people, well, for so many reasons, for people getting married or having families, or for people who moved away or move a lot or don't live near where they grew up or went to school, or, I was thinking about this the other day. I was texting with my friend that I'm super close with in college. And I realized that even though we text a few times a year and like she's still very special to me, I haven't seen her since her wedding, which was 13 years ago. And my brain just went, it's like we always still check in every once in a while, but
Yeah.
it's like you said, life stuff just happens. And just like in TV and movies, there's these unrealistic expectations for romantic relationships. It's the same way with friendships too.
Yeah, I agree. So do we think that Brooke is going to, in this marriage, that Brooke is going to make it? Because on one hand, she seems pretty self-aware of what she's getting into, and she does seem to enjoy her husband. But she says that always good to marry someone who loves you more than you love them. What do we think about that?
Okay, so I've been given that advice before, and I've heard that bandied about. I don't know, it's a chicken or egg thing where I don't know if someone heard it on Sex and the City or if it made its way into Sex and the City because the writers had heard that somewhere else. I don't know how I feel about it as far as like the power dynamics go, but as far as Brooke making it, I agree with you. I think she's very self-aware, and I kind of think this marriage will probably go the distance. I'm not saying it's going to be blissful, but I actually think that she has a very realistic expectation for it, which as it goes on will serve her well. Like she doesn't have, she's doesn't have her head in the clouds about it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
The only thing that I think could be a problem is that if either of them meet someone that they actually legitimately fall in love with, then what do you do?
I have a sneaking suspicion that her husband's in love with her. And I don't know. I do wonder what will happen with Brooke, but she seems so content. Like even when we see Sam and the turtle, because Sam's making him her fixer-upper, I laughed really hard at that line when she said, honey, by the time I'm done with him, he'll be Gracie Mansion. Because I thought it's such a New York thing to say. And also, she's really trying to make him into a desirable human being. But when Brooke is looking at them and she says about Sam, she seems happy. It's like, okay, maybe Brooke actually is going to be content in his life. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could see it working out because they seem to like each other enough it's not like a true marriage of convenience or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe if both of their, if their tides turned as far as their financial situation, that might be a deal breaker for this couple. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I could, she also seemed like the kind of person that maybe could would be getting married a bunch of times. I could see that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I think it's an interesting thing. It's that she has a realistic expectation for marriage that I don't think it would surprise me if she stayed in it, but it wouldn't be devastating for her if she got divorced either. So it's like whatever, like you said, whatever kind of like comes at her in life.
We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That always just amazes me. That people can, I have not been able to find one person that I want to marry. When people can find like 4 or 5 people who want to marry them, I'm just like, wow, God bless you.
It is pretty amazing. I was thinking about that too, because one of my friends, I was in her wedding, and then the marriage didn't work out. And then 3 years later, I was away doing a show, so I couldn't make it, but she got married again. And I was joking around with her. I was like, you have found 2 people to marry you before I'm even getting close to one.
Right. I'm like, wow. Well, let's talk about Bernie, or Turtle, as I like to call him. So the thing about, I guess, Bernie is that I don't understand why he can't just have a breath lozenge, a breath mint. Like, if that's the major problem with him, which seemed to be the major problem, like, can somebody just be like,
yeah. And the interesting thing is that he knew because he was like, oh, it's the Chinese herbs, which was funny that he was self-aware about it.
True.
But obviously he's taking it to make sure his system is running correctly or whatever, which I actually found endearing. It's like, oh, his bad breath isn't because he doesn't brush his teeth or take care of himself. He's just trying to like holistically heal his body or do whatever he's doing.
Well, so Samantha is going to be meeting this guy at this bar, and he stands her up, and then she sees Bernie there, and she decides, what the heck, I'm gonna hang out with him. And it's a tricky thing, I think. Not that I'm some expert on dating, but with something like this, where evidently he is, talking about mushrooms and food, and just not a very interesting person to talk with. Like, how much of yourself do you change to make yourself more appealing and to make you more likely to find a mate? And then how much of it do you this is me, this is who I am. This is a silly example, but I remember, so when my sister and brother-in-law were dating, they were poor college students, had very little money, and he would take her to go get those, like, those like giant bottles of or like gallons of fruit punch that they sell at like convenience stores and stuff. He would get those and like cheap hot dogs, and that would be their thing. And they were talking about after they were married, and he was like, yeah, that was fun. And she's like, yeah, I didn't really like that. It just
he had such a fondness for it. I love that. He's like, those were the days. And she's like, I mean.
So I think that every couple probably has something like that, where you're like, I'm not going to share this part of, or I'm just going to put up with this, to be a good impression. You like this person, but they do some weird little thing that you're like, oh, or I don't know if you can relate to that at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's more that I know. I'll say this. I think when I was dating, I know my best qualities and I know my worst qualities. And I definitely try to highlight the best ones while minimizing or pretending that the craziness doesn't exist over here.
That's the thing with this turtle guy, is that he seemed to be totally open to the makeover from Samantha, but then like didn't want to change things that I would feel like would be more consequential, like fixing your breath. Like, why was that a problem? You know what I mean? Like, I would think he would put more of a problem of him, like her, like completely changing kind of his persona and identity and everything like that, making him into this mob boss guy. And but no, I'm not going to fix my breath.
Yeah, why would that be the hill that you die on? Like, yeah, I'd be like, exactly. I'm glad someone told me I'm gonna fix that before anything.
But then they ask the question, is everyone in New York settling? And it's a tricky question, because you obviously have to settle in a certain extent, that like humans aren't perfect. And so because we're not perfect, and we expect people to accept us, flaws and all.
Yeah.
So when we meet somebody, that they're going to have things that you're just like, oh, I don't like that, or that's weird, or that's strange.
Hopefully it's not going to be as offensive as the breath situation with Turtle. But I mean, even that, it's like, I oddly found him kind of charming, quirky, charming.
Yeah.
He's cute.
Yeah. He had a certain charm about him. I wish we'd maybe gotten a little bit more of his his personality. He was a little bit kind of just molded whatever was needed for each scene, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, more. There was a great little scene between Carrie and Stanford, I thought, in this.
Yeah.
And they talk about, well, should they just basically have a marriage of convenience to like keep them so they have someone to go to weddings with and things like that. And he talks about how he took out a personal ad and he was meeting a guy. He comes up to him and just says, "Are you Stanford?" And then the guy just leaves, which made me so sad. And he says, "Even guys like me don't want guys like me. I don't have the gay look," is what he says.
That broke my heart. And also the personal ad made me laugh that he had said, Ed Harris type.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. And I looking at him in that scene, I was like, you are a little bit like an Ed Harris type. Like, again, I just watching Stanford and watching his friendship with Carrie and this, and just this pure connection of when they go to the ballet and they're talking about all they have in common and how they want that best friend to sort of be with them through it all, which a lot of times is what marriage is. I thought it was interesting how it seems like they were legitimately entertaining the idea so much so that he actually introduced her to his grandmother who was holding on to his inheritance until he gets married.
Yeah. Yeah. And she says, the grandma says, he's a fruit. And which is awkward.
Yeah. It was an awkward interaction, and Carrie's like, oh.
Yeah, and Carrie's like, well, it looks like Stanford's not gonna be getting his inheritance anytime soon.
Well, and it is so interesting when you see things like this, like even just this notion of having to wait until you're married for some milestone. Like, I understand why for an inheritance you would put a age limit on it or something like that, but I mean, I'm engaged, I'm getting married, but like my brother and sister and I were all in our 30s and none of us are married yet. So like, I mean, it's an interesting thing of like, well, but we're still like adults. And I think it's an interesting concept that some people don't seem to view you as an adult until you're either married or you have kids or something like that.
Yeah, I think I mentioned the other day about the family reunion where they were like, they're giving out the family, all the information packets, and they're like, well, why don't you talk to your parents? And I'm like, I'm literally older than you. I'm older than you.
Rachel, where's your adults?
Yeah. And it is frustrating when you feel like as a single, you're constantly kind of put on the kids' table. And that is something that can definitely happen. Not as much at like weddings, but definitely at like family gatherings and things like that. And sort of this idea that somehow the 18-year-old in the family who, not my immediate family, but more cousins and things like that, but that like the 18-year-old who's just gotten married is somehow looked at by this older generation, like this grandma, as sort of more mature and more I don't know, it's a weird thing than somebody who's like in their 40s and 50s. Like, what? And I was always surprised, my grandma, because she did something, she was like that. I was really surprised because she got married later, because in World War II, you either got married really young before the war, or if that didn't happen, you got married later, a lot of people after the war. And that was her. And she still managed to have 8 kids. Unbelievable. And
truly,
yeah, and she got married at 32 and she had 8 kids. And but yeah, I would think that she would be more sort of sympathetic of that whole situation of being, because she had a great life. I mean, she was in the waves and she did great things before she got married. And she was a missionary for the church and for her church. And so you'd think that, but no, here's how it's just kind of like, why are you married? What's going on?
What's happening?
I don't know. I don't know why I'm not married. Please help me.
You're like, why do you have someone? Like, who are you?
Yeah, that is one true thing that people on shows and stuff always complaining about friends setting them up. That's not me. That's not this person. If anybody watching wants to set me up with anybody, as long as they're not like terrible, I'll go on. I'll have a meal with almost
all right.
anyone. Yeah.
Oh, wait, what did you say?
I said I'll have a meal with almost anybody. I'll let anybody buy me dinner. I'm not offended at all. If anybody wants to busybody matchmake me, I'm available and ready to go. I'm not annoyed at all. So there we go.
Please don't do this to me. And then if I have someone for you, be like, Papa Moi, not for me. So you're open. You're open.
Yeah, I'm not guaranteeing that it'll be a match, but like I said,
you'd have a meal.
Oh yeah, I have a meal with anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a really, well, first of all, that was a great ab workout. I'm laughing so hard. But that's a really good point. I always sort of felt like I dated someone for a long time in my 20s. And when I became single, I was like, all right, I'm ready for my friends to matchmake me. Not one time. Not one time.
I never have people try to set me up. It's so hard to meet people when you're 30 plus. Like, it's so hard.
It is funny though, in all these, whether it's Sex in the City or like any Hallmark rom-com, and it's like the person who's always resistant to the matchmaking and someone trying to match them up and they're like, no, I don't want to be set up. It's like, maybe because we put out that energy of, oh, we're open, it's this weird thing where we're not attracting that. Because no one, not even a passing, oh, I think I know someone who might be good for you. No, never. No one tried.
Like, definitely people can go overboard. Like, I had a roommate once who, when she would go home for Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff, her mother would have basically a date there for her for Christmas, like eating a Christmas meal with them. She was from a family of 10 kids and she was the only one not married. And so like, it was her mother's sole goal in life was to get our youngest daughter married. And I was just like, that's too much. That's too much.
Yeah. When you said you'd have a meal with anyone, you didn't mean your Christmas meal with your family. That's not where he's invited.
Yeah, you don't want some random person in all of the Christmas photos. But in general, I'm totally up for it. I really am. So
well, you get the wheels turning that I know you're truly open to a setup.
Yeah. And if you're watching, I'm in Utah. So yeah, make it happen.
But also you travel around a lot for your
That's true.
work. So I'm just saying.
All right. And maybe I'll put my Facebook dating profile or something like that in the comments, in the description.
Ball rolling.
Yeah, let's get this going. I've had no luck on my own, so might as well. Anyway, I mean, it's I kind of wonder if someone like Turtle is kind of a little bit on the spectrum. Did you kind of feel maybe a little of that?
Yeah, and that's probably why I thought he was really endearing. Like I find those I find certain intensities in personality and people who are neurodivergent to be really interesting, because I also have pretty obsessive personality and I fixate on things. So that's probably why it had a charm to me. But I definitely think he could be.
Yeah, because he wasn't very observant of sort of social cues, and also the way that he would like fixate on like mushrooms, or like what kind of mushroom is it, like that felt very neurotypical, I guess, to me. And I think it's just about finding for Turtle, I think because it is a terrible match with Samantha. They have nothing in common. They're totally like, that would not work at all. But if he could find somebody who's kind of like equally nerdy and fun, and that would be the match.
And I had hope for him at the end when he said, do you like this turtleneck? My ex-girlfriend picked it out. I was like, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And I did think it was cute, the ending scene with Carrie and Big and the pasta sauce. That was cute.
I did too. And this is what happens. He reels us in.
Yeah, he does. So what would you give this one 1 to 10?
This one I would give a solid 8. I really like that it incorporated such a wide array of fun characters that I felt like even Brooke was really fleshed out. And I love that Stanford had a good plot line in this, and Turtle was funny. So I would give it a solid 8. What would you give it?
I think that's fair. And there was a lot going on, and it had some really funny moments. Charlotte's plotline with the rabbit. You had Samantha and Turtle. You had Carrie and Stanford, which was that was a really sweet plot line. So yeah, I think 8's a good one for this one.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
So next we have the baby shower. This episode 10. And basically their friend is invited them out to Connecticut to go to the baby shower. And it inspires all kinds of madness, but not only their friend, but it's also sort of their wild friend who enjoyed some sexy dancing. Is that fair to say?
I yes.
Yeah. And
at minimum, it was definitely sexy.
And I really wish we had a mother on the episode because I would love to hear their perspective on this. Because I do think that motherhood is going to change you. I mean, it's such, how could it not? How could it not? But I also think that we sometimes, I don't know, we can just be so judgy of people that are in a different phase or have made different choices than we have. And I hate that we do that as women, that we're judgmental of people who have too many children or not enough children or haven't gotten married, and that we kind of, somebody's a working mother, somebody's a stay-at-home mother, that we kind of don't allow people to make choices and we don't support them in those choices can be frustrating, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we don't see this in our culture as much with men getting sort of their choices being dissected in that way. And yeah, I find it, and I think you're similar in this way too. Like, I am in awe of moms and motherhood, and I really respect that. But I also think that sometimes it's hard for me to hear when someone who is a mom will say, well, like, you don't know love until you have a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I am probably not going to have children. And like, I definitely feel like I know what love is. Like, I feel like I have the love of family and friends and my cat. And like, I think you can love people in a very deep way. That love may not always be the same, but you also don't know what's going on in someone's like body, head, mind, soul, heart, all that stuff. So, and then I think conversely, there's also the stuff with people who don't have children also judging moms like, oh, she's super into her kids now, we don't like that, or oh, she doesn't work outside of the home, that's a problem, or she does and that's a problem. So yeah, I think if everyone could just focus on their own path and support other women on theirs, I think we'd all be a lot better off.
Yeah, like Carrie, at one point she says that the woman with the master's in finance, that all she wanted to talk about was her diaper genie. And I mean, that's what makes adult friendships really hard, is that it's not that you maybe have anything opposed to having children, or it's just that it can be hard because, somebody is just in a different phase in their experiences. And so all of a sudden that connection, when you were both in college, when you're both in, it's just different. And so you kind of either have to just appreciate the person for who they are now, and hopefully they do the same for you, or, the friendship is going to struggle. But yeah, I mean, I really related to this episode a lot because, again, I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of pressure to become a mother and to get married pretty young. And I struggled with that when I was younger because I didn't feel like I was a particularly maternal person. And part of it was because my mom had had babies when I was in high school, and when I was 16 and when I was 18. And I obviously I love my siblings, but it was a very stressful experience. She had to have full bed rest for the pregnancies. And then also for my sister that's 10, I have a sister that is 10 years younger than me. So for those three, and yeah, I read over my journals from those times, and I just talk about how how stressed I am, how worried I am, worried about my mom. And it was I'm not gonna say a traumatic experience because that's too far, but it was definitely something that I didn't have sort of the luxury of the perfect, baby experience that most girls, certainly from my culture, would have. You'd see a baby and be like, oh, I see a baby and I'd be like, oh no. Because I knew how much work it was. I knew how hard it was. And I just, there was something about it. I would hear people talk sometimes at church, and I would feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not feeling those desires? Why do other people want to get married so bad? And I'm kind of like, if it happens, that'd be cool. And anyway, so I was struggling with that a lot in my 20s. And I finally kind of had to have a spiritual journey for me, that I realized that God loved me for who I am, and he made me a particular way, and that I do have those maternal qualities, but just in different ways. It's not necessarily and I'm sure I'd be fine with a baby, but I'd probably be the kind of mom that would maybe be best once kids are a little more verbal. And that would be my prime, I could talk it out and everything. And that was a big moment for me when I kind of had that realization of I know God loves me for who I am, and he made me a particular way to bless me with gifts. And I don't have to be this ideal maternal, this idea of a maternal woman that I kind of set up as, why am I not like that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. And I think it is also that, as much as we want to think, and they touch on this in this episode too, it's this whole thing of, can you have it all? And what is having it all? And really, I mean, just in a realistic sense, I think there are things that you and I get to do that we wouldn't be doing if we had children. Not saying that we still wouldn't have our passions and still be doing things that we love in that way, but you can't do everything in the same way. Your life does change. And I think that if you're honest with yourself about what your calling is and what you're meant to do, and you open your heart to hearing that, rather than following on some path that you think someone else wants you to go on or that you think you should, I think everyone would be a lot happier.
Yeah. I remember a friend of mine talking about how she had thought going into marriage and motherhood that, oh, I'm gonna be a working mother, and I don't want to give up my career and everything. But for her, when she had a child, she just really enjoyed it way more than she expected. She's like, I don't really want to leave my child. And then other people, that's not their experience in their journey. But some people do kind of have it and realize, oh, this is way more fun, way better than I thought it was going to be. And and so we have to allow all different presentations of womanhood, I think. And you have to allow people the ability to change as well, because obviously an experience like motherhood is going to change you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that even when it happens to you, it might affect you in a way that it's different than what you thought. I mean, I had a friend who said to me, she wanted to be a mom from the time I met her. We were 19, 20. She got married really young, had kids really young. And she says to me, even now, she says to me, she's like, I love my kids more than anything in the world, but I hate being a mom. And she thought she never wanted to work outside the home. She wanted to fully, and that is what she does. She homeschools her kids. She's one of the most amazing people I know, but she said that she will always love them more than anyone else, but she doesn't actually like the day-to-day life of being a mom. So I thought that was really interesting, that someone who was always thinking that's what they wanted, when it actually happens, sometimes it feels different too.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, and you have these women who are all kind of thinking back to their previous lives before they had kids. And yeah, I mean, it's tough because it is going to, you can't have the exact same life, but it also, I mean, according to this episode, it seems like you have to throw it all out. But then Carrie talks about, oh, I know plenty of hip women who still have their careers and babies. And yeah, I mean, you can, everybody's journey is just different, and you have to, obviously finances play a big role in this as well. Somebody that can afford to have a full live-in nanny is going to have different options than somebody who doesn't.
Well, and that's a good point too, that when we watch Sex and the City, even though we're seeing all these different experiences, we're still seeing a very privileged experience. Like, whether you're living in a suburb in Connecticut in these huge fancy houses, you have a lot of economic privilege. And same thing with these four women who live in Manhattan, they have a lot of economic privilege. So we're just seeing a certain little slice, which is interesting.
I
too.
did laugh when Samantha says that the witch in Hansel and Gretel is greatly misunderstood.
Yes.
That was a good line.
It's such a classic Samantha line too.
Yeah, it was funny. And then we also have, so Charlotte finds out that Lainey is stealing her baby name that she always wanted, Shayla, that she has like a whole hope box for. And I think that you should be able to reserve one name within your family, like, because people know that I love the name Lily and I love the name Christian. And so one of my
beautiful names.
Yeah. So if one of my siblings, sister-in-laws or sisters, named one of their kids Lily or Christian, I would be kind of bummed out. Like, I'd be like, oh, everybody knows that's, even though I'm probably not going to have kids, like that was the ones that I was thinking for my kids. But I feel like for friends, that's asking a lot. I mean, I didn't even get the feeling that this woman was that good of friends with Charlotte.
Well, that's something I was sort of confused about. And that you almost wish you had like the earlier days of when they were in their 20s to know, because it feels like they're not good friends now, but that when they were all single, like they were going out together a lot. Because I thought it was interesting that Charlotte shared with her that was her baby name. But yeah, I don't think you can really stake claim to multiple friend groups. And these kids are not even going to live near each other. Unless Charlotte's planning on going in Connecticut, which she probably in her head at this time is thinking about that.
Yeah. Like, do you have a baby name that if you were to have a child, what you would?
So it's funny because my sister and my two cousins and I, me and my two cousins, we didn't know that the three of us had the same name. And my sister like took the air right out of it because she didn't like that name for a kid. And we all started laughing. So basically our mom's maiden names are Callahan, and all three of us wanted to name our first child Callahan, whether it was a boy or a girl. And my sister just looked at us and laughed, and she said, it makes me think of pierogies. And then it totally changed it
I
for all
just
of
think
us.
of the bad guy in Big Hero 6. That's the one I think of. His name's Calvin.
So it doesn't work for you either. So now I don't have one.
But one thing that really surprised me is that you have, so Carrie thinks she might be pregnant, and then you have Lainey who is pregnant, and both of them are drinking throughout the episode. That was
So
surprising to me.
the Carrie thing to me was, to be honest, I didn't really notice, only in that I think, and maybe this is me rationalizing her behavior. To me, the Carrie drinking thing was like, she doesn't really think she's pregnant. It's more just like a thing she's entertaining in her head. Like she knows that you can be late on your period, whatever.
Yeah.
The Lainey thing, it did kind of stop me in my tracks for a second because yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we know now that having a drink here and there is not, you're not going to have fetal alcohol syndrome with your child but you certainly would never see that in anything now. You would never see somebody drinking pregnant, never, in any kind of show, even a drama.
Oh yeah.
And so it was kind of surprising to me, but she ends up taking the pregnancy test. I just thought it was such a great scene when she says that I don't know. Am I maternal? Again, because my past, it really connected with me when she says, am I maternal? I don't think I would be very good at this. And I think that there's a side of you that's okay to say, okay, I'm not going to be good at this, so then I don't want to have children. That's a perfectly valid choice. But I also think that nobody thinks that they're going to be great at it until you do it, and then you learn along the way. Like I think that a lot of people end up being great parents who don't think that they necessarily are going to be great parents. Yeah, I just thought it was a good moment.
Yeah, I agree. And you don't really feel, I think with a lot of big life choices, you're never going to feel 100% ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as we've said many times, the comparison is the thief of joy. And so if you're comparing somebody else's parenting, somebody else's children, somebody else who seems like a perfect mother in your eyes, then you're usually comparing their best with your worst, and
Yes.
you're robbing yourself of joy, of appreciating the moment and being able to be happy with what you do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, man, I thought the acting in this episode was so good. Like even all the moms that popped in, or even that mom at the end, that the little girl comes over to Carrie and Carrie says, oh, she's adorable. And the mom says, most of the time. Like, I just thought it was such
it was a good moment.
It was such a great moment. And this show, it really continues to impress me. Of course, we know that the series regulars are great actors, but they really do get these incredible guest stars to come on the show and co-stars that even just for the tiniest roles, they really nail it.
Yeah. And I thought the Lainey, she looked so much like Carrie Coons to me. I was just like, what? Who was in the recent really Ghostbusters, if people saw that. But she was really good. I thought she did a great job with showing kind of both sides of sort of the party side, and but then also how she's trying to change her life. And I don't know, I just thought she did her name is Dana Wheeler Nicholson is the name of the actress, and I thought she did a really good job as Lainey.
Yeah, she definitely made a character that we thought was going to be very one-dimensional, multi-dimensional. And I didn't see it going that way until you realize that she is the same. We all have the same hopes, dreams, fears, doubts, all that stuff. They just manifest themselves in different ways based on what stage in our life we're in.
I also thought it was funny with Miranda saying it's a cult. I've lost 2 sisters to motherhood, and I know what I'm talking about. That was funny.
Really
That was
funny. And then seeing Charlotte just living her best life, like with the Bellini baby basket and like wearing the cute little thing on her head. It was like, oh, Charlotte was meant for this life.
It was good. I really like this episode. This might be my favorite of all the ones we've talked about. I guess I connected with it probably the most. I don't know. I would give it a 9.
Yeah, I really, this one hit me. Like for all the funny things, there were so much in it that pulled in my heartstrings, and just that last shot of Sarah Jessica Parker walking home from the park and saying, on the way home, I got my period. And you just see her face and you're like, how does she feel? And I think that it's again, one of those things that has made this show just really stand the test of time, is that you have a lot of gifted people working on it, talking about real human things.
Yeah. And Lainey kind of ends the episode and says, one day you're going to wake up and you're not going to recognize yourself. And I think that that's true. I mean, I think it's especially true if you go through something as intense as raising a child. I mean, that's a big thing. So I liked that I don't know, she said that. So
yeah.
So let us know, especially if you are a mother. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. I think it would be very interesting in the comments section or on Twitter. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And Jax, where can people find you?
At Jacqueline C Tweets on Twitter and Jacqueline Collier on Instagram.
You can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And also make sure you're following Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And we are also at the City Girls Pod on Twitter. So check that out. And then if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That helps us so much. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. We also have our Patreon group and merch store, and we would love for you to check that out. Information in the description. We're having our tomorrow, when this airs, it'll be tomorrow, that we are having our Q&A with Will Kemp. It's going to be super fun. So make sure you sign up. We would really appreciate it. And
you
thanks so
lucky
much.
Girl.
Yeah. So thanks so much. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.